Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cyber Podcast from Swiss to Cyber. This is the second episode, and we do have our guest from the previous episode as well, Vikalp sir from NICA as a senior security engineer. We are waiting for Vikas sir to join as well, and I hope that he will join soon. He's having some problems due to health, and we just hope that he is in a better health and joins soon. Now, let's get started. Welcome, welcome, Vikalp sir.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Great to have you here again, sir.
Thanks, Shruti, for having me on this second round of podcast which we have.
Excuse me, I just there's some audio problems. Have my Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, just go ahead. So, hello and welcome again to the second episode of the Cyber Podcast from Swiss to Cyber. How to not get phished with our esteemed guest Vikalp sir and also Vikas Yadav. So, just an introduction about us on who we are. We just started last year, founded by Vikas Yadav, and we just help you to achieve your cybersecurity dreams come true by landing your first cybersecurity job. Now, how do we achieve that? We provide our services with respect to content as well as guidance. So, if you're looking to gain some knowledge in cybersecurity, upskilling, and want to get prepared for interviews, we have the cybersecurity content covering that part. You can go through the list of conferences that we give or articles and roadmap videos from different YouTubers and much more. If you're just stuck in a loop on how should you navigate your career in cybersecurity, then the personal mentorship sessions that we provide might be helpful for you. And last but not the least, the Cyber Podcast is our latest offering, and it's been our second episode that's going. So let's start with the main event: how not to get phished. And we just took the reference of the Ukraine power grid attack of 2015. This was a Vice documentary that's available on YouTube. I would highly suggest you can watch this episode also after the session, and you'll definitely learn a lot of things. So, what is phishing? Well, it's actually a kind of social engineering. It pretends to be something genuine, but it has malicious intent and evil motives. So, yeah. And if you are aware about the MITRE attack framework and how attackers operate, this could be used for reconnaissance, initial access, and even if your systems are compromised, this could be used for lateral movement. And just remember the words reconnaissance, initial access, and lateral movement, because I am going to elaborate that later as I go on through the attack. So it happened around Christmas 2015 that Ukraine suffered massive attack on their power grid, just affected three of their companies, mostly in Western Ukraine.
Sorry to interrupt, Shruti. Can you please?
Hello, sir. Hello. Welcome, Vikas.
Hi, thanks for having me. Please continue, Shruti. Thanks a lot for the great
Yes, sir.
introduction.
Yes, sir. Vikas, sir, were you saying something?
No. I was
Okay.
just saying that Vikas was in the lobby. Yeah.
Thanks. I was... So moving on to the main event again. So So it affected three major power companies in Western Ukraine. And since you might be thinking, what is the link between cybersecurity and power? So let us know a bit about operational technology. So everything that you see for power transmission, it's not only digital. And the operations they do have a physical aspect, like the physical processes of controls, the infrastructure, like power stations, transformers. So there is a combination of software and hardware that controls it. And that control unit is probably connected to the internet. So that is where the hackers got access. And how it started is what is this session all about, phishing. So let's read more about this. So how did they experience when the attack was going on? It turns out that they lost their controlling ability to their operational controls. So they were seeing that the cursor was moving, like checking off here and there. And even though there was not anyone, but the keyboard and mouse were functioning as if someone was working on that. That is when they realized that something abnormal is happening and this is not some regular software glitch, and probably it has been taken over by the attackers. And as they were trying to figure out what was going on, they saw that the substations that were controlling the grid, that were supplying power to the residents, they started to go offline and they were in chaos. And it was still in the middle of the day for the citizens, so they were no idea of what was actually going on, what was unfolding in front of their eyes. Even though the attack did not last for a day, but certainly it showed proof that how vulnerable is the critical infrastructure and just how easy it is to actually gain access to some of the critical infrastructure like power transmission. So, how did this happen? Just 6 months before the attack, like before Christmas, the operators, they received Google alert kind of emails, like of the events that were happening in Ukraine. And these were phishing emails. Let me remind you that these were genuine looking, but had malicious intent. And just like an unsuspecting user, someone had clicked and then they downloaded a malware that was named Black Energy 3. And turns out this malware just got installed and browsed through the system to find out the system credentials. And yeah, that is how you perform reconnaissance. The malware got downloaded and it just explored the systems. So once that one system got compromised in the whole power transmission network, it traveled to the next one to get some more details about the next. And that is where the lateral movement was taking place. Now, there was another malware that was in combination, and this was called the kill desk. This is just to distract and also, cause chaos to the operators. And what happened is that once they started to figure out that, okay, something was happening abnormally, and let's just restart our systems to see if we can just get rid of the connections and stuff. If they reboot, kill desk would just wipe off their system. So they physically had control, they had lost control of their control unit. And definitely it was being controlled by the internet. So their internet lines were compromised. It was just the same as burning your bridges. How did they recover? It turns out that the solution ultimately was not digital at all. And they first had to isolate the system, and they just physically pulled out the plugs through the control channels, the connections, that the infrastructure that was connected to the internet, to the control unit. They had to physically isolate it from the internet, the control unit, and then they went with their cars and manually powered on the transformers. I would highly suggest that you go to the video and literally witness how they were going to the transformers of 25,000 volts and just had to turn on two switches. So turns out that for many digital problems, the solution is not always digital, but it is physical. Thank you. So that all started with just one phishing email, and that's how you know how dangerous phishing emails are. And we're going to just cover it ultimately in a broader lecture that is going to be happening now on how should you not fall for this trap to literally cause chaos in your company and also for yourself. Thank you. Hello, sir. Hello, Vikas, sir. Hello, Vikas. You
Yeah,
can.
hi, Shruti. I think Shruti, thanks for a lovely introduction and showing a very great example of what extreme measures can take place when you get subjected to phishing emails. But I think at the core, phishing emails are just spurious emails which lure us to either install some malware on our PCs or may also entice us to give our own credentials when some fake website is launched. So, phishing can have various effects as severe as what Ukraine attack had happened, or even simple ones where you can lose your username and password on a fake website. It could also lead to sharing credentials or installing some malware on your machine or your mobile phone. So, it is one of the top vectors for cyber attacks. In one of the studies, it quoted that 95% of our cyber attacks are through emails, and email is the top vector. So we this affects both organizations and individuals equally. And while it is the most prevalent attack, we can take very simple measures to protect us from phishing as well. Now, these are my initial thoughts. We'll go over it, and would like to invite Vikalp also to share his inputs as well.
Sure, sir. That's sir. Any
Uh,
insight that you would like to
yeah,
share?
sure. First of all, thanks, Shruti, for giving insights to that story regarding cyber attacks, and it really shows like why currently there is a very importance of security awareness in the organizations and even in our individual lives as well when we are using like many kinds of apps, like including banking apps, social apps. We are coordinating digitally more. So yeah, adding to Vikas's point, like he clearly mentioned that it entices us to, like, phishing emails entices us to share the credentials, and which can have a very huge impact even on our individual accounts, even on our organization. Let's say if any employee receive any phishing emails, right? Phishing email regarding regarding the credentials of any critical asset of the organization, and like without the proper awareness, he can he may provide the sensitive credentials, sensitive details to the cyber attackers, which can create a lot of chaos and like bring organization in a huge impact, and the lot of information, lot of sensitive information can be at risk. So yeah, that is why, I mean, security awareness that we will cover, of course, in the later part of the session. So yeah, so that are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, sir. I mean, even when I was working and interning, I saw someone who faced a phishing email that came from just gmail.com. It was nothing fancy. It was just a text-based email, nothing link of or social engineering kind of thing. It was just that, okay, I'm your boss and I just need 10,000 rupees. Can you send me on UPI? Turns out that person had sent, it was nothing fancy, just a Gmail. And, the HR is sending mails to create awareness of those things. So it's probably the easiest, but yet some of the deadliest ways to actually experience an attack.
Yeah, because it can have a lot of impact, including not just the loss of your personal information, but the financial, uh, like financial impact as well. And even for organization, it could be a reputation loss, right? Trust issues with their customers. If, let's say, any of their personal information or sensitive information got leaked out due to such phishing attacks, right? Because there is nothing technical, nothing technical kind of thing in a phishing attack. Just someone can receive a phone call or a message and click on a link, download anything, and it can create a lot of suspicious things to the organization as well. So yeah, it
Just to take
has
on
a lot of.
Just to
Yeah.
take on from what Vikalp was saying, I think you must have some of you may have heard about business email compromise. I think that is also a very common phenomena when attackers use spear phishing or directed phishing towards specific employees of the company. What they may do is either they may request finance departments. You may have a spurious email coming from a supposedly CFO of a company or a CEO of a company, where he request for some wire transfer in an emergency. That is also common both on emails and on WhatsApp or messages. And business email compromises can also lead to advanced attacks, such as where certain vendors can be impersonated, and you may request for a change of account number, and also then request for a transfer of funds into a new account. Now, this obviously happens with a lot of insider knowledge, as well as knowledge of systems and how the previous transactions have been taken. But it's a very common aspect, specifically called business email compromise, or BEC, where either you convince the person to transfer you funds in a case of an emergency, or you modify the account of a vendor and request for funds to the new account. And sometimes these are so convincing that they keep talking to both the parties from spurious emails, and then convince one of them to transfer, and only post that you've not received money for a long time, then you try and think, why has this happened to us? So I think that is where what basic controls in terms of process controls and also will take place. That means, as Vikal was mentioning, it's not all technical. It's also related to what basic process controls, which we'll cover in our subsequent slides as well.
Sure, sir. I guess we can move on to some protection mechanisms that we can take from our ends at work or even at home. So one of the ways I feel that, as you were talking, because it's email oriented. So I think having a backup channel would help, like an email, other than an email. If there was a phone based contact, like directly we can call and just verify from the customer or vendor directly. And that would, I guess, would help to bypass such social engineering attacks that are happening from email, because you're not talking face to face, but rather behind a screen in such ways.
Yes, Shruti, but in that case also, like there is another category of phishing which we call as phishing attack, right? Which is a voice phishing. Someone might impersonate any legitimate identity and call you asking for your, some KYC details or verification details. Let's say someone calling from your bank or your social media or basically as a process you have to verify your details and just I'm sending you some link or you have to provide me some of your information. So I would say that without verification it's always a risk whether you are receiving such request either on email or through SMS or through or over a phone call. So that is why we have to be very careful when we got such information on email, phone call, or SMSs, like from where it is coming from. So there are various ways that we will also discuss, like various ways through which you can detect that it could be a phishing email. What are the verification things that you can do, right? So yeah, I mean, I would also request Vikas if you can also
Yeah, thanks,
comment
Vikal, for
on
giving an
this.
introduction. I think there are a lot of steps which you can take to be safe from phishing emails, both at the individual and organization level. I think individual level, a lot of us know and we have taken steps, but at the organization level also, I think I want to stress upon that organizations need to start ensuring how, like email by default is let not say not insecure, but more trusting. So you can easily spoof an email from an account until unless you set some basic strong security controls like DMARC. Now, DMARC is domain message authentication relay, a very technical word, but very simply it means that no one can send an email on your behalf. And by default, when you set up an email service for your organization, people can send spurious emails on your company's behalf. For that, you need to do two things. You need to set up the DMARC policy to reject mode. And how you do that is primarily through two mechanisms. One is DKIM and one is SPF. Now, SPF basically means that you are having a sender policy framework. Basically, you are specifying what all IP addresses of which servers can send emails on your behalf. And DKIM is digitally signing that email. So combination of that results into DMARC. And what it simply means is that when any person receives an email from your email service or email domain, they will ensure there will be a lock on the screen. There will be no question mark, which you see in some of the emails which you receive from smaller organizations. So you'll also be, no one can send an email from any other server. So whenever, let's say the hosting providers like Gmail receive an email, what they do is they check your DMARC records and ensure, is the email coming from one, all the IP addresses you've listed in your SPF record, and second, from your DKIM, is it digitally signed or not? And to make a combination, then you are able to see a nice lock on your email. That's one of the first steps there. So I would urge all organizations to ensure that DMARC settings are set. And sometimes you remain in a monitor mode for a long time. It's also necessary to go to a block mode. As soon as you go to a block mode, no one will be able to send you spurious mails from your email, and also they will be automatically be blocked by the major hosting email providers. Just wanted to stress on DMARC and how that can be used by organizations to ensure that their emails are not spoofed, which is there.
Thank you, sir. That were some really great insights, and I think this is something that even an aspirant, cybersecurity aspirant, should know as we are peaking just to even clear the interviews, and also some valuable insights for the companies. Coming back to phishing, with generative AI, with the textual as well as audio visual development that has been taking place, I think phishing attacks and even video mode attacks are going to be more common with deep fakes. So sometimes you may ask to have a video call with a vendor, and turns out you actually know that person and he's talking exactly, responding exactly the way that you are expecting. So probably you will need to come up with some better breaking factors or authentication factors, maybe even going back to personal meetups to actually ensure security.
Yeah, and I will also I would like to add to Vikas's point, let's say Vikas's, regarding the TKM, like along with that, like organizations should also stretch, some administrative controls also. Let's say I initially mentioned about the security awareness. That is the most important thing that organizations should consider. Let's say you should have a annual training of your employees regarding certain sophisticated attacks like phishing, malware, ransomware, social engineering. These are the most common attacks through which attackers target the companies and their data, right? So you should have your lot of trainings, including your new joiner training. Let's say if any new joiner comes to your organization, so you should provide them what all business you have and what all attacks that might happen, so that they would be aware, like during their day-to-day activities, what all things that they should be aware of, right? So there are many things that you can do, like one is security awareness, one is checking. Let's say if you receive any emails which you were not expecting to, you can see the sender's ID, and what is the content of the email. Is there any spelling mistakes, or is there any sense of urgency in the emails? Is there any link which is asking you to click on it, and otherwise you have some 3-4 hours to do, so those kind of things are some the major indicators of the phishing emails as well. And even if you receive any phone call, right, it might happen that the cyber attacker may call you, and it's like impersonating someone from your IT department, right? We found some, we are monitoring your systems and we found some vulnerability into your system. For that, you need to provide us your laptop credentials or your email credentials to us, right? So in that case, we should also be very cautious about, and we should actually verify to the IT team, like, is there any kind of campaigning or any activity being done or no, or I am getting some phishing calls. So I think security awareness is, I believe, is the most important thing that organizations should consider, even in our own lives as well, into our family members. We should always talk about, let's say we all are on social media sites and we have online banking things, right? So we should consider the basic controls, including the multi-factor authentication on our apps, the like password policies, like we should change passwords regularly. All of these things I would feel are equally important, which we call as administrative controls.
Great points, Vikalp. I think one thing which you can add in organizations is maybe show and tell, where you can actually show a real life phishing email and give examples and ask people to check and find out. And maybe even when in the new joiner training, besides having phishing simulations, having a real life phishing link sent immediately and ask people to click and check what is there. So that really adds value rather than sending to the whole organization, maybe doing it while you're doing the new joiner training, sending phishing emails right there and then and seeing how many of you can recognize it or not, running through some things. And that will really help, I think, making people understand what is a phishing link and what is not. So show and tell approach is very much required, and you're trying to gamify it is also helpful, because as it is, people are overwhelmed with number of trainings they have to do. So I think we need to make a security training really fun and interactive as well.
Should there also be punishments if someone fails this phishing training?
I think it's a very chicken and egg situation, or a very catch-22 situation. I don't think by punishment you really achieve something. But what you could also do is, let's say there's a repeat offender, then you need to make them really go through some dedicated training as well. So not really punishment, but I will say training to enhance the view, and that would really help there, because see, it's sometimes some of the phishing emails are so uh, convincing that people will fall to it. And in fact, when companies track the phishing click rates, somehow you're trying to make it easier so that your phishing click rate goes down, but that's an oxymoron. You have to make it as difficult as you can so that they are exposed to real life scenarios. So it is very important. So I don't think punishment would help, but real life trainings and making them understand the importance. It's like you can't beat up your kid or someone to study unless that willingness comes from himself. So that's why it's there. And also in organizations, you need to have protections beside. You have to factor in the human error. So that means you have to have for email, you have to have an email security gateway which blocks phishing emails. You have to have a proper endpoint detect and response solution, that even if the user has clicked the link, it should not detonate in a sandbox environment. And finally, even if the user has given his credentials, all your external facing applications should have a two-factor authentication, and regularly monitoring what credentials have been exposed in the dark web and continuously changing users. That's where I think this interesting site of Have I Been Pawned is very useful. If today you go and put in your email and Have I Been Pawned, you'll discover that your email and password has been exposed in multiple sites. So that's a fantastic way to know how exposed your own credentials and emails and other data is. So it's very useful to maybe do that kind of a small activity and show them, make them aware. And then automatically, we used to do this training in our various organizations over the years. Ask everyone to put in their email into Have I Been Pawned, and discover how many places it's been compromised. And then automatically urge them immediately to set up two-factor authentication. That will, I think, is the classical show and tell approach which I was suggesting. And show, tell,
I
and
think
make it.
that's the good way. Yeah, I think that's a good way to tell and teach users about the importance of cyber awareness and these cyber threats. And adding to the Vikas's point, I think what I usually feel that let's say you have a number of digital accounts, like you have social media, banking, other apps like your grocery apps and all of these things. So the best practice that you can probably do is like you have different passwords for the different categories of your accounts, right? It's like for your banking application you have different passwords, for your Gmail and other things you have different password. Because the thing, let's say if tomorrow any application got any application's data got leaked, right? So your passwords wouldn't be compromised. Otherwise, if you have the same password across all 10-20 accounts you have, so you probably will be at a huge risk, right? So that is why it always like as per industry best frameworks, if you look over the internet, it always say that you should have a different accounts of your like different passwords for all of your accounts. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. Those were great insights, and that was an amazing discussion. I guess we are at the end of our time for this lot of 30 minutes. I would love to keep this conversation going, but I hope that this short and crisp but powerful presentation was helpful and you guys also enjoyed participating. Thank you, sir. I hope we come back soon together again, maybe on a different topic. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shruti, for giving a great introduction, and thanks, Vikal, for your lovely insights as well. I think hope
Thanks.
the attendees benefit from our our insights, and we look forward to inputs on what else we can host and share our knowledge as well as get expertise from others as well. We look forward to getting more industry leaders to share their thoughts as well.
Sure. We already have our volunteer onboarding program going on. So if you are an industry professional who wants to join and just share a few hours of your knowledge and experience with us, definitely I'll just reshare the Google form and I'll reach out to you and you can maybe join us as a participant of the next podcast. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Shruti. Thanks, Vikas.
Thanks.
Thanks, Vikas.